The single dad stood motionless, hands trembling as he clutched the car door. His dusty pickup truck sat at an awkward angle, blocking the gleaming black Lexus behind him. Horns blared. People shouted. But he didn't move. From the driver's seat of the Lexus, a woman in a sharp blue blazer stepped out, heels clicking like gunfire on pavement. "You can't just block an entire road, sir," she barked, glaring at him with corporate fury. "You're holding up half the city." The man didn't speak. Instead, he slowly stepped aside, revealing a small boy in the back seat, barefoot, pale, and convulsing. His lips were blue. The dad's voice cracked. "I couldn't drive." He stopped breathing. For a moment, the CEO's face faltered, but then came his next words, just 5 of them, each one sharp enough to silence the city. "He has your son's heart." The world shifted. The yelling stopped, and everything the CEO thought she knew about life, sacrifice, and strangers unraveled in a single moment. But how did they get here? What secret pain brought a father and a CEO to the same roadside fate? Let me take you back to where it all began. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the busy city street. Horns blared, impatient drivers shouted, but none of it reached the man standing beside his old, battered pickup truck. His eyes were locked on the small figure slumped in the back seat, his son, pale and barely breathing. A sleek black Lexus rolled up behind him, its engine growling in frustration. The driver's door opened sharply. Out stepped a woman in a tailored blue blazer, heels clicking sharply on the asphalt. Her gaze cut through the crowd like a blade. "You can't just block the entire road like this," she snapped, voice sharp and unforgiving. "People have places to be, appointments to keep." The man swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper, trembling with raw desperation. He stopped breathing. "I had no choice." The woman's eyes narrowed. "That's not my problem." Behind her, honking grew louder. The crowd gathered, cameras flashing. But the man's focus never wavered from the boy's pale face, the shallow rise and fall of his chest. Suddenly, his hand clenched into a fist. "He has your son's heart." Silence crashed over the street like a thunderclap. The woman's face shifted from anger to shock. Her lips parted, but no words came. The world seemed to hold its breath. How had their lives, two strangers, become so tangled? What secret pain lay beneath the anger and fear? And how far would a father go to save his child? This was only the beginning, before the chaos on the roadside, before the desperate race for his son's life. The man was just a boy named Marcus, growing up in a small, run-down trailer park on the edge of town. Marcus was the kind of kid the world overlooked. His clothes were always a little too big, his shoes worn thin, and his hands calloused from hard work that most kids never knew. Teachers called him slow. Neighbors whispered about his family's bad luck, and classmates mocked him relentlessly. Loser. Nobody. Names that stuck like glue, chipping away at his confidence with every cruel word at school. Marcus learned early that silence was safer than shouting back. But inside, a quiet storm brewed, anger mixed with a stubborn will to prove them wrong. His mother worked 2 jobs, fighting exhaustion to keep food on the table. Marcus often woke before dawn to help, sweeping floors or fixing leaky pipes with trembling fingers. One night, after a particularly brutal day of insults and fights, Marcus sat alone on the cracked steps outside his trailer. He clutched a worn baseball glove, the only gift his late father had left. "I'll be better than this," he whispered into the night. "I'll make them see." That promise burned in his chest like fire. But life had a way of testing even the strongest flames. By the time Marcus turned 14, school had become a battlefield he couldn't win. Every day was a fight, not just with the kids who jeered or shoved him into lockers, but with the ache in his stomach from hunger, and the weight of responsibility he carried at home. When his mother's second job left her too exhausted to cook, Marcus learned to fend for himself. He'd steal moments at the neighborhood grocery store, slipping a loaf of bread into his backpack when no one was looking. But the real battle was at the construction site. Dust thick in the air, the clang of metal and the smell of concrete were constants. Marcus woke before sunrise to join his uncle's crew, swinging hammers and lifting beams well beyond his small frame. His hands blistered, skin cracked, bruises bloomed on knees and elbows like badges of survival. But every strike against steel was a strike against the hopelessness they tried to bury him under. At night, when his mother's tired smile was the only light in their dark trailer, Marcus would lie awake, dreaming of a life that didn't feel like punishment. One evening, as he sat watching the sun bleed into the horizon, a voice called out rough but kind. "You got grit, kid," his uncle said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're tougher than you think." Those words echoed inside Marcus, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, he could break free from the bruises, both seen and unseen. Love arrived quietly in Marcus's life like a whisper, a bright spark in a world weighed down by shadows. Her name was Emily, a soft voice with laughter that could warm the coldest nights. They met in a worn-down diner where Marcus worked late shifts, her eyes full of dreams that mirrored his own. For a time, things felt real. The promise of a family, of something steady and true. When their son Noah was born, Marcus felt a fierce protectiveness that made his heart both heavy and full. But dreams have a fragile way of shattering. One night, Marcus came home to silence. No laughter. No Emily. Just an empty crib, a half-packed suitcase, and a note scrawled with trembling hands. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." She was gone, without a goodbye, without a reason, without him. The weight of her absence crushed him. Nights stretched into endless echoes of loneliness. Noah's cries were the only sound breaking the silence, a constant reminder that Marcus was now alone in a world he wasn't ready for. He held his son close, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. "I will protect you. I will never leave you." But beneath the fierce love was a fear as deep as the night. How could he possibly raise this child on his own? Marcus learned quickly that fatherhood was a relentless, exhausting battle. Every day blurred into a whirlwind of midnight feedings, diaper changes, and desperate attempts to catch a few hours of sleep before his next shift as a night janitor. His worn hands, once strong from lifting beams and swinging hammers, now gently rocked his son to sleep in a creaky rocking chair that had seen better days. The tiny apartment smelled faintly of bleach and baby powder, a fragile sanctuary amid the noise of the city. Noah's bright eyes searched his father's face, innocent and trusting. Marcus felt a fierce surge of love, raw and unfiltered, mixed with a crushing weight of responsibility. Bills piled up on the cracked kitchen table. The landlord's voice was sharp on the phone, demanding rent Marcus didn't have. At the hospital, doctors warned him about Noah's weak heartbeat, but Marcus barely had time to breathe, let alone worry about what lay ahead. At night, when the city's roar softened, Marcus would sit by the window, watching other fathers play in parks or walk hand in hand with their children, feeling invisible and broken. He whispered to Noah, "I'm here, just us now, and I'll fight for you." The fight was far from over. One cold November night, the fragile rhythm of their lives shattered. Noah had been coughing all evening, a harsh rasp that scraped through the silence like a warning. Marcus sat beside him, wiping sweat from the boy's pale forehead, heart pounding harder with every shallow breath. Then came the moment Noah's small body stiffened, his lips turning a ghostly blue. "Dad! Help!" came the weak whisper. Panic seized Marcus as he grabbed the phone, hands trembling uncontrollably. The ambulance's siren pierced the night as they raced through dark streets to the hospital. Hours later, under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, a doctor delivered the words that froze Marcus's soul. "Your son has a congenital heart defect. Without a transplant, he won't survive." The world closed in around him. Heart transplant. Hope and fear collided in a brutal storm inside Marcus's chest. How could he save his son when the cost was so high? When the system was stacked against people like him? The doctor's eyes were kind but firm. The waiting list is long. It could be months or years. Marcus clenched his fists, refusing to let despair take root. He looked down at Noah's fragile form, breathing through tubes, and vowed, "I will find a way. I swear." But in that sterile hospital room, the fight for Noah's life was only just beginning. Days turned into weeks, but the relentless grind didn't stop. Marcus sat in cramped, sterile offices, filling out endless forms with shaking hands, each signature a desperate plea for help. His nights blurred into a cycle of hospital visits and exhaustion. The hospital staff, polite but distant, treated him like just another case number in a sprawling, indifferent system. Every call he made to the transplant coordinator ended with a polite apology and a reminder. The waiting list was long, and urgency was measured by cold medical charts, not a father's heartbreak. One afternoon, a social worker's clipped voice cut through his hopeful silence. "Unfortunately, your income level places you low on the priority list. We recommend continuing with palliative care." The words hit harder than any blow. Marcus stared at the sterile walls, the color draining from his face. How could a man's love and a child's life be reduced to numbers on a form? He thought of Noah's fragile heartbeat, each irregular thump, a ticking clock counting down, but no amount of pleading seemed to sway the bureaucratic machinery. Late that night, Marcus sat alone in the hospital waiting room, the weight of cold shoulders crushing his spirit. Yet beneath the exhaustion, a quiet fire kindled in his chest. They could delay him, dismiss him, but they would not break him. For Noah, he would fight the system itself. Marcus worked every hour he could find, juggling multiple jobs: night janitor, construction laborer, even selling small tools he once treasured. His hands, scarred and aching, trembled as he counted every penny, hoping to scrape together enough for private treatment or a faster transplant. But fate was cruel. Hours were cut unexpectedly. Contractors pulled out. His body, worn thin from exhaustion and worry, betrayed him with aching joints and sleepless nights. One evening, Marcus sat at a flickering diner booth, staring blankly at a half-eaten meal. His phone buzzed, another rejection letter from a transplant fund. His heart sank. Why won't they just help us? He whispered, voice cracking. Noah's soft cough echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the stakes. Even his few friends drifted away, tired of the constant burden. The weight of failure pressed down, threatening to swallow him whole. Yet, in the darkest hours, Marcus refused to surrender. With a clenched jaw and shaking hands, he made a vow. No matter how many times he fell, he would rise for Noah. Because sometimes love means fighting impossible battles, and losing isn't an option. The call came unexpectedly. One cold morning, a voice on the other end of the line, calm but heavy with meaning. "Mr. Lawson? This is the hospital transplant coordinator. We have new information about the donor." Marcus's heart pounded as he listened. The donor's identity was a secret until now, a name he recognized immediately. Her son, was she? Marcus's voice caught in his throat. Yes, the donor heart came from the daughter of a local CEO. She passed in a tragic accident. Suddenly, the walls of Marcus's world shifted. The woman whose sharp gaze had scolded him on the roadside, the CEO, was connected to this silent, beating gift that kept Noah alive. He wrestled with a storm of emotions: gratitude, guilt, confusion. What did this mean? How could their lives be so entwined when all they'd ever known was pain and distance? He clutched the phone like a lifeline, the secret past pulsing beneath the surface, threatening to unravel everything. Marcus knew one thing for sure: their story was far from over. The street was buzzing with angry voices and flashing cameras. As Marcus stood frozen, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders, the CEO, her polished suit sharp against the backdrop of honking cars and impatient onlookers, didn't hold back. "You're blocking the road. Do you even realize how many people you're inconveniencing?" She spat, her voice cutting through. The chaos. Marcus said nothing at first, eyes fixed on his son struggling for breath in the back seat. But her words, sharp, cold, felt like daggers slicing through his already fragile spirit. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some judgmental, others curious. Cameras caught every moment, broadcasting his desperation and her disdain for the Fangro world to see. "People like you should just stay out of the way," she sneered, voice dripping with condescension. Marcus's chest tightened, a mixture of shame, anger, and exhaustion boiling inside. He wanted to scream, to explain, but the words caught in his throat. All he could do was clutch his son tighter and pray for a miracle. The CEO's gaze faltered for a heartbeat as she glanced into the back seat, then hardened again. But beneath the humiliation and judgment, something inside Marcus stirred. This wasn't just about a blocked road anymore. It was about fighting for his son's life, no matter the cost. After the roadside confrontation, Marcus retreated into a storm of emotions, anger, shame, and an unyielding determination that refused to be crushed. That night, alone in his tiny apartment, he looked at Noah's fragile chest rising and falling with each breath. The weight of helplessness pressed down, but beneath it, a fierce fire ignited. "I won't let them win," Marcus whispered to himself, voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. "Noah deserves a fighting chance." He began gathering every scrap of information he could find: legal aid, charitable organizations, advocacy groups, anything that might cut through the red tape that kept his son waiting. Days bled into nights spent on cold floors and worn-out chairs, scrolling through stories of others like him who had faced impossible odds and won. A quiet revolution began inside Marcus, a refusal to be invisible, to accept the system's cold dismissal. Calls were made, meetings arranged, letters sent. He wasn't just a single dad blocking roads anymore. He was a father fighting for justice. And with every step forward, the world would see that love was stronger than bureaucracy. Marcus's days became a blur of phone calls, meetings, and petitions. He spoke with lawyers, hospital administrators, and patient advocates, his voice raw but unwavering. Every no he faced was met with a fiercer "why not?" He started a blog, sharing Noah's story with raw honesty, the city's response swelling as people began to see the man behind the pickup truck. Donations trickled in, enough to cover extra treatments and medications. One afternoon, standing in a crowded community center, Marcus faced a room full of strangers. His voice cracked but never broke as he spoke of love, loss, and the fight for his son's life. "Some say I'm just a single dad, a nobody," he said. "But I'm a father, and I will never stop fighting." The CEO's world was changing too. News of the man she'd shouted at reached her ears, forcing her to confront a truth she'd long buried. Marcus's courage was no longer invisible. He was becoming a symbol, a testament to the power of a father's love. The weight of the fight began to crush Marcus. Bills stacked high, exhaustion gnawed at his body, and yet he refused to stop. One cold morning, he sold the last of his tools, the only possessions left from his construction days. The worn hammer, the rusty wrench, memories of a life once dreamed. He watched the money slip through his fingers, knowing it was Noah's lifeline now. That night, he skipped meals so his son could have fresh formula, choosing between his own hunger and Noah's care. His body ached, his spirit frayed. But Marcus's resolve never wavered. Noah's life is worth every sacrifice, he told himself through the long sleepless hours. Friends who once called him reckless whispered that he was losing himself. But Marcus knew better. Sometimes, love demands every last piece of you. And Marcus was ready to give it. The world had mostly returned to normal. A full year since the transplant, and Daniel had started to let himself breathe again. His son, Jonah, was stronger playing outside, laughing more, getting winded less. A new heart beating in a boy who'd once been weeks away from fading. But that illusion shattered on a Tuesday morning. Daniel had just packed Jonah's lunch when he heard a crash upstairs, then silence. The kind of silence that rips a hole in your chest. "Jonah?" he called, bolting up the stairs. Jonah was collapsed on the floor, lips pale, eyes fluttering. Daniel's heart thundered. "Stay with me, buddy," he whispered, lifting him into his arms. He didn't think, he just ran. Tossed Jonah into the car, forgot his phone, left the front door wide open. The hospital was 17 minutes away. He made it in 11 running lights, honking, weaving through traffic. Then the traffic froze. A construction detour bottlenecked 3 lanes into one. Daniel pulled onto the shoulder, horn blaring. No one was moving. He screamed into the windshield, desperate. The clock was ticking again, ticking in the worst way. And that's when she stepped out. A black Range Rover, power suit, perfect makeup, wrath on her face. She stormed toward him, heels clacking. "You're blocking the road. Move your car or I'll call the police." Daniel didn't move. Couldn't. His hands trembled as he glanced back at his unconscious son. "Please," he said, voice cracked. "My son." But she wasn't listening. She pointed, shouting louder. Until Daniel stepped out and said the one thing that stopped her cold. Daniel stood between her rage and his reality. "My son is dying," he said, quiet but firm. The CEO scoffed. "We're all going somewhere, but that doesn't give you the right to block an entire—" "He's had a heart transplant," Daniel interrupted. "Last year." She hesitated. Daniel's eyes burned, but he kept speaking. "You think I care about your meeting? Your car? I don't have time." "Not like you do." Paramedics finally arrived, called by a driver behind them. They wheeled Jonah out, barely responsive, and that's when Daniel looked the CEO in the eyes and said it. "The heart my son got, it came from your child." Her mouth parted. "I recognize you," he continued. "You spoke at the donor memorial. Your son Matthew, 11 years old, brown hair, loved baseball." She froze. Color drained from her face. "No," she whispered. "That can't." Daniel gently touched her arm. "I didn't want it to happen this way. I never wanted to see you again, because it meant you lost something no one should ever lose." Silence blanketed the street. Even the horns stopped. "You gave him a chance," Daniel said, voice breaking. "That gift, your son, he gave mine another year, another birthday, another laugh. That's why I couldn't move the car." The CEO's eyes welled up, her jaw trembled. She reached out, but Daniel was already following the stretcher. The road was open now. But everything had changed.